So before I talk about my thoughts on this episode, I need to mention something real quick. When the series started on this channel, it was mainly focused on comparing the anime to the manhwa and me giving my opinions on the changes and the episode along the way. It worked really well in the video I made on the first episode of the anime since there was a lot of cut content that I wasn't happy with, which meant that there were a lot of things for me to point out and talk about. That's no longer going to be the point of this series though, since every episode after the first one has been pretty faithful to the manhwa. There's really no point in mentioning every tiny little difference between the anime and the manhwa and pretending like that's quality content when it really isn't. Instead, the series is first and foremost going to be a series where I go through each individual episode of the Tower of God anime and give my honest thoughts on what happens throughout the episode in chronological order. I'm only going to mention the differences between the anime and the manhwa if they're relatively major or if I just find them interesting. But like I said, that's no longer going to be one of the main goals or purposes of this series. Also, I've got a bit of a different recording setup today because my brother is trying to sleep and his room is right next to mine. I don't want to wake him up at 9 in the morning by talking very loudly about anime, so if the audio quality sounds different, it's just because I'm in a different place. But hopefully there isn't too much of a difference. With that out of the way, I want to start out by saying that I absolutely loved this episode. I had a few minor little issues with it here and there, but all in all, I had a great time watching it. The action was great, the fights were well choreographed, and the animation was consistently smooth. It was a very well put together episode. The episode starts right where the last one left off, with Kun laughing at the other regulars because they still haven't noticed that they're fighting over the wrong crown. And can I just say, I don't know how I completely skipped over acknowledging Kun's voice actor in the video I made on episode 2. I guess somehow I was too focused on Leroy Rowe's amazing voice actor to realize how fucking perfect Kun's was as well. The voice they chose for him fits so ridiculously well, it's kind of hard to put into words. His voice actor really embodies the I don't give a fuck kind of attitude Kun outwardly seems to have 90% of the time. It's great. Not too long after that, the 4th round of the crown game begins, and things really start to get good. First off, I just want to say that the scene where Kun just casually leans on Bam and even lays his head in his lap while saying that they should take it easy this round is fucking amazing. It's a nice subversion of what you'd expect. Up until this point, Kun outwardly seemed to be taking the crown game at least a little seriously, even if he was using a bunch of cheap tricks, so you'd expect him to be all ready to fight in the second to last round of the game. Instead, he literally just lays in Bam's lap, tells Rack not to fight, and says that they should take a break even though they're literally in the middle of a match. Just as the confusion really starts to set in for the anime-onlys and the characters, it's revealed that not only can Kun's bag duplicate items, it can also apparently store people in it, and that one of the 3 teams that entered the match owed Kun for bringing them past the first few tests by basically smuggling them in his bag, so Kun and Co can just sit back and relax while they fight off the other 2 teams for them. This part in the manhwa was one part of the crown game that really stuck with me even long after I first read it, so getting to see it animated and getting to watch other people see this scene and have it revealed to them for the first time was an amazing feeling. And now that we're on to the 5th round of the crown game, I can finally talk about the 2 very strong contenders for best girl that get their chance to shine this episode, Dorsey and Hwaryeon, a name that I definitely just fucking butchered. Neither of their names have been dropped within the anime yet, so I guess me mentioning their names is a bit of a spoiler, but honestly, considering that their names aren't major plot points or anything, I feel like it isn't much of an issue. And if you are an anime only watching this right now and don't know who Dorsey or Hwaryeon are, Dorsey is the girl with the one horn and the heels, and Hwaryeon is the girl in the leotard with the staff. I want to start out with the obligatory statement about their voice actresses. Hwaryeon is yet to say anything in the anime, which is completely reasonable since season 1 isn't really where she gets to shine as a character, so there's nothing to say on her voice actress since we haven't really had a single line of dialogue from her yet. And Dorsey, on the other hand, is very talkative, and I've gotta say they made a good choice for her voice actress. She does a really good job of showing in her voice and her laugh just how crazy Dorsey is. Something that I honestly forgot about until watching this scene is the fact that Dorsey is fucking crazy. You don't see as much of her in season 2, so it's easy to forget the fact that she's just fucking nuts. Anyways, just wanted to mention that her voice actress does a good job of showing how mental Dorsey is, and I really appreciate that fact. Now, before I get into the main thing that happened this episode, and also the main thing I want to talk about, I do have one last thing to mention, and that is that Hwaryeon's introduction is handled really well this episode. The scene where as soon as the match starts, she takes out an entire team within a matter of seconds is animated really well and does a good job showing that Hwaryeon is definitely a force to be reckoned with, and a major threat to Kun's team this round of the game. The fight between her and Dorsey is also really well animated and choreographed. Also really like that throughout their fight, we get to see Dorsey use her heel to fight multiple times, so when it inevitably breaks later, it doesn't seem like it came out of nowhere. And now, with all that out of the way, we can finally talk about the main thing that happened this episode, and also the main thing that differs from the manhwa in a fairly big way. Like I mentioned a moment ago, in the fight between Dorsey and Hwaryeon, Dorsey's heel breaks. This gives Hwaryeon the chance to go straight for the throne, and she uses that to her advantage as she makes her way over there in a second tops, and hits one of the hooded figures with her staff, revealing to Bam that the girl under the hood is, in fact, Rachel. Bam, of course, freaks out and tries to protect Rachel, but in the process, he leaves the throne and disqualifies his team from winning. He then gets hit in the head with Hwaryun's staff, falls down, explodes in a Shinsu that fucks up Hwaryun's eye, and then has to be stopped by the Black March because he was about to kill Hwaryun. If you've read the manhwa, you know that this scene is handled fairly differently in the manhwa than in the anime. In the manhwa, the whole thing leading up to Bam leaving the crown and getting hit is pretty much the same, but the manhwa is much more subtle about Bam using Shinsu. It doesn't show this big grandiose explosion of golden light blowing everyone away. It just shows the aftermath and other people's reactions. We just see Bam, covered in blood, internally apologizing to Kun and Rak, saying that he has to protect Rachel. Then something cracks, half of Hwaryun's mask falls to the ground, everyone looks shocked, and Hwaryun screams in agony as she clutches her now badly bleeding eye. There's no big explosion or anything shown, just the aftermath, and I really like that. I definitely prefer the manhwa's version of this scene, but that doesn't mean I don't like the anime's version. I like them both, I just prefer the manhwa. Really the main reason I still like how the scene was shown in the anime, even though I prefer the manhwa's version, because it opens up a lot of possibilities for the future of the series. The fact that there's an anime-only scene of the Black March means that there is the possibility of the Black March actually being established as a character throughout the anime, which is something I'm really excited for. In the manhwa, the Black March barely even shows up and admittedly isn't really much of a character. Her soul, or whatever it'd be called, only shows up a grand total of 2 times throughout the entirety of the series, or at least through all that I've read, which is quite a bit. The first time she shows up is obviously near the start of the series when Bam needs to ignite her power to pass the first test. The second time she shows up, I can't really say anything about the context of because of spoilers, but I can say that it isn't until the 242nd chapter of season 2 of the manhwa. And neither of the times she appears do anything to establish her as a real character with a personality or to develop her at all. Both times are just a character asking to ignite her power. The closest thing we get to see to a personality from her is when she calls Yuri an idiot who can't be reasoned with, which, by the way, is an accurate description of Yuri. I also like the idea of the Green April possibly being established as a character. I'm mainly just interested in seeing what Green April thinks of Anak, since that's something that's never brought up in the manhwa, which makes sense considering that she literally only shows up once throughout the entire series and is kind of outshone by the Black March the one time she does. Without getting into spoiler territory, Anak has a fairly rough backstory, and the Green April has been by her side throughout all of it. Not to mention the fact that Anak has no trouble igniting the Green April, which is something that I feel like way too many people skip over and don't give her credit for. Being able to ignite one of the 13-month series weapons without any issue is a huge accomplishment that at the point where we currently are in the anime, Yuri hasn't even been able to do. And Yuri is a fully fledged ranker princess that's made it all the way to the top of the tower before. So the fact that Anak can do something that she can't when she's just a regular on the 2nd floor is a big deal. And the fact that Green April respects Anak enough to ignite for her without hesitation honestly just really makes me curious how she feels about Anak. I'd be really interested in learning if Green April actually cares about Anak because of what they've been through together, or if she sees her as just another princess. Now, with that big long rant out of the way, I want to mention one last thing before I move on. And that is that just because I just spent so long talking about that possibility and how I liked the idea, doesn't mean that I actually expect it to become a thing within the anime. Honestly, I would be very surprised if it did become a part of the show, but just because I don't expect it to happen doesn't mean that I can't talk about how cool it sounds as a concept. After the crown game is over, we cut to a conversation between Lee Ro and Han Sung-yu. They're talking about the conclusion of the crown game, and Han Sung mentions to Lee Ro that the real reason behind the floor test isn't actually to find out who's strong enough to climb the tower. It's to eliminate any threats to the tower before they can make it too far. Then Lee Ro asks Han Sung if he's known of anyone who's been able to control Shinsu without first making a contract with an administrator. We finally get the name drop of your boy, Yurek Mizuno. If you've watched my previous 2 videos on the Tower of God anime, which most of you admittedly probably haven't, but if you have, then you know that something I brought up as a big issue in both the first and second episode is that they completely skipped over and didn't even mention Yurek Mizuno. Well, this episode we finally get the name drop. Not only that, but we also get to see his back tattoo with the crest of Wolha Iksong and his name. It was super fucking hype, finally getting a name drop of the man, the myth, the legend, Yurek Mizuno. I don't know, maybe I care way more about him than I really should, but I just fucking love Yurek, and I'm so glad that they finally said his name within the anime. And now that we mentioned Yurek, I think I've said really all I have to say about this episode, which means that we're finally at the end of the video. If you enjoyed, maybe hit the like button or leave a comment letting me know. If you didn't like the video, then I don't know, leave a dislike or something. I honestly really don't care all that much. These videos are just something that I'm making because I like to make them and talk about something I'm passionate about. So I don't care too much what other people think of them since they're really just a hobby. Anyways, bye guys, I hope you all have an amazing day.